I'm not everyone. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education meeting will be held on August 27th at 7:30 p.m. in the Board of Education meeting room. Welcome, everybody. Happy summer. It's nice to see faces again. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, and in that time we have welcomed Dr. Adley to the district. We are so happy you're here. We are glad you have found your permanent home here in Darien, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
With that, I will move on to public comment this evening. Seeing none, I will hand it over to Dr. Adley for the superintendent's report.
Well, good evening, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here, and I would like to extend my appreciation to a few people. First, the Board of Education. Secondly, if I may say, my central office staff, and who are somewhat represented here tonight, but there are many more of them, for such a warm welcome to the district. To many of the parents and the community members and organizations that have reached out to Pamela and myself, Pamela being my wife. We look forward to putting roots in the area here, and delighted to be here. You may know I started July 1st. I did 2 weeks, took off to watch an Irishman, win the British Open, and came back again. So I'm a happy guy, and I'm delighted to actually be here. We had a wee opportunity to meet some staff members through the summer programs, whether it's the ESY programs or whether it was the drama programs, and going to see some of the productions. In this case, it was Jungle Book. I will say that the arts are alive and well here, and that's wonderful to see. But just even visiting some of the special programs for summer programs and the regular summer programs that we have, it was easy to tell that we have dedicated, talented, and I'll say perhaps even most importantly, extremely caring staff members, and that was wonderful to see. And some of those programs have sort of wound down a little bit. You'll hear a wee presentation at a future board meeting about the summer programs. The people will come before you and share about them. But it was a nice opportunity for me to get to meet some kids, and also to get to meet some staff members and many parents who were around during the summer. So again, some of you here, if I don't put a name with a face, I know some of you have emailed me, and I appreciate that. And it's been nice to go for lunch in different places and find out where to go, and people have been just wonderful, and I'm just delighted and excited to be here. And I'm trying to navigate the traffic. It's a new experience, but it's just wonderful to be here. Thank you. I have a few wee updates to the board, some of which you may know, some of which you may not. Certainly you know that we have a new finance director who's starting, Richard Rule. Richard comes from the Western Public Schools, and he has a lot of experience in the private and public sectors of finance, and we look forward to Richard joining us. It looks like to be around September 1st for that particular start date. I had the opportunity to attend the Oxbridge Building Committee, so I look forward to going back on Thursday, and that's a wonderful, it's nice to see that come to fruition, and the progress it's making, the excitement around that project, and it seems to be moving forward nicely, and I'll attend that meeting again on Thursday. Just a couple of announcements that you may or may not find useful. Some of the parents might. The 9th grade iPads and 5th grade Chromebooks will be ready for distribution the first day of school. The 3rd grade classrooms will receive their Chromebook carts. Resulting in that means that now there's a Chromebook cart in every 3rd grade classroom. So that completes what I think was the plan. When you go into the schools, there'll be new digital signs. I think they're basically the TV, but there's different digital signage that there will be in all of the schools. And we just released a new website with a mobile app. Just go to the App Store and download Darien Public Schools, and you'll have a new app. The website may seem somewhat the same, but the infrastructure is a little bit different. So thanks to the technology department for updating that. Susie's department, Dr. Silva's department, in terms of curriculum, has been, as you would imagine, in the summer, pretty active. One of their projects as the Institute of Inquiry, which was most attracted my attention, because that's a little bit different in nature and description for teachers in K through 8, and that was particularly pertaining to science and social studies at the middle school. Dr. Silva will have an opportunity at some point to discuss that, but that was in collaboration with Project Lead the Way that you're probably familiar with at some level. The finance department, we're actually working to close out FY19 as we enter FY20. The auditors are in town at this time of year, which is normal, and they have conducted their preliminary field work and will continue to work remotely with the district and also then complete their findings in September. I mentioned some special education services and also the summer programs have went extremely well. We do have bridge programs that are happening at Darien High School this week and next week at Tokanik. And I see that I missed Willy Wonka. I wasn't in town at the weekend, and I don't know if anybody happened to see that, but it was nice to see. Did anybody here see it? Good?
It was wonderful, yeah. Yeah. 3 times.
It's wonderful to see so many art programs in such a small, finite period of time to such high quality that were delivered. But it's wonderful to be here, and I look forward to getting to know the community and committing to the community. And to the staff, I look forward to supporting them in their efforts in delivering instruction and curriculum this particular year. So thank you again for your very warm welcome.
Great. We will move on to the approval of minutes. It's requested that the board approve the following minutes. Minutes of our regular meeting held June 25th, 2019. May I have a motion? Mr. Burke, and a second. Mr. Maroney, all in favor? That is unanimous. Minutes of the special meeting and executive session held on July 8th, 2019. May I have a motion? Mr. Deneen, seconded by someone raising their hand. Mrs. McCammon, all in favor? That is unanimous with one abstention. Mr. Burke. Oh, all right. So we actually cannot approve those minutes.
If you weren't there, you can still approve.
Yeah, if you're not there, you can still approve. Okay.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, we're good. We will move on. Are there any board committee reports? Mr. Deneen.
The next meeting of the Oxbridge Building Committee will be Thursday, August 1st at 7:30 in the morning. And then we'll also have another design committee meeting. It will be our 4th design committee meeting. We're narrowing in on specific plans and a specific design. We have to go back to the state in early September, and we'll come back to the board with updates and changes to the ed specs as we've gone through the design and phase project.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to presentations and discussion, a first reading and discussion on the proposed 2019-2020 district goals and objectives. Dr. Adley.
So coming into the district, I certainly don't want to take the position that
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second.
Sure.
If you all see us looking up, we have a new screen up here so that we don't have our backs to you. So we're listening and looking above your heads. Go ahead. It's
okay.
brand new to us.
So essentially, I'll cut to the chase in the sense that I'm sort of tapping in from a board perspective to the expertise of my staff and the format that you've used relatively to date. So you'll see them in the same format. I may have suggestions for the board as we move forward, except for I've asked my staff, and I appreciate their work on the goals and the reflection and the work they've done. I've asked them to be relatively concise, collapse things where you can collapse them. I'll say that some of these sort of fall within our assistant superintendent's purview in terms of their domains where they work a little bit. It's the nature of their work a little bit. So some other things could be added in there, some things could be taken out. Look for the board's input in that. I would say though that the one amendment that I've done is to add the first goal, which is really to try and engage the board in strategic planning. So essentially what that would look like is for the first 90 days I would do an entry plan for you, which I would present here in August and share what I'm going to do. And then 90 days thereafter, essentially it would be what I'm starting to do now, working with constituents, listening to people, learning from people, trying to then see what the district values and where we might go and provide qualitative and quantitative data that sort of shape maybe decisions that can be made. And ultimately then to engage the board in the second half of the year and also rolling into next year into a process of strategic planning that develops into some let's just call them guiding documents, guiding principles and values. So that's the one major change or revision in sort of nature that you see to this. I'm certainly open to the board's input into that, but that would be a recommendation I would make. And again, I thank my colleagues for their work in their respective departments, and I can either field questions about that particular strategic goal, and then or pass along to my colleagues for their comment and take comments at the end, whatever the board would.
So throughout the year, usually it's if we have questions, but given that this is the first read, I think it's probably best if we go through each goal.
Sure.
And then throughout the year, we will be aware, we've addressed them in public, and we can take questions on the goals on where we are. But I think for the first read, we should probably run through and get comments.
That sounds good to me. Well, the first one's on the table then.
And I'll take them individually, because I think that'll help us break it down. So are there any questions on the first, Mrs. McCammon?
Can you talk a little bit more specifically about your methodology for the strategic planning process? Namely, I think one of the key things that you mentioned is engaging our various constituencies. And so I'd love to understand a little better how you envision the role of superintendent versus the role of the board in coming up with a good understanding of what our constituencies want.
So the 90-day entry plan would delineate the constituents that I would be meeting with, but, and to be honest with you, it would be all the constituents, right?
Right.
From the staff to the students,
Right.
the board members themselves will be interviewing each board member, the community members. So we'll be reaching out and providing that data. I would bring back kind of what the district values, right? Where it has its strengths, where it thinks it needs to go, where it would like to go. Then I would engage the board. I think honestly, engage the board would probably I think it's probably most useful to have a facilitator for that purpose in terms of, okay, so what do we hear?
Yep.
How do we go back out and whatever we come up with or whatever the board comes up with, there would have to be representation, a guiding committee, a guidance steering committee that involves other constituents and not just board members, right? But you're also charged with the responsibility of leading the district. So that's a big responsibility and onus that you own there. So I would have a wee bit of independent consultation with that to guide that process.
Okay.
Other things I have to look at is like high school. There are guiding documents and guiding processes for that, whether it's NASC or whether it's Division of the Graduate or whatever. We may not want to do those things or otherwise in terms of where they are in the process. But what are we doing? What are our guiding documents that will ultimately guide the work that the parents do, that I do, that the staff does, that the board does? So essentially, it would be guided by
Great.
an independent consultant or something.
Because I think that second part, not only of who we talk to and how we talk to them, but what we agree to in terms of the deliverables that we want at the end of that process, whether that's a vision or goals
Yes.
or what that looks like. I'd love for us to be sure that we have a common understanding what those are going to be
And I think
who owns what.
I think someone just working independently,
Yeah.
even outside of myself, with that process is very helpful.
Yep, agreed. Wonderful.
Any other questions on the first goal? Okay, we will look forward to that. I think the board has been hungry.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry,
One
Ms.
more thing.
McCammon.
So I think there's a number of things that may have come up either in emails we've received or sent, in terms of things that board members might be thinking about. It seems to me that things like OpenGov or look at athletics or look at foreign language, that those kinds of things you're intending to talk about as part of the strategic planning process, as part of the harvesting of what the board is looking for, or do you want us bringing those kinds of things up tonight for the type of work we should be doing going forward?
So I can defer to Tara, the board chair, just a little bit in terms of how you wanted to do with the independent things. I'm not necessarily all of those things under the strategic plan and sort of fall
Right.
in somewhere of that, but
Yes.
not as individual items.
Correct. Yeah.
Not, so if you want some individual item accomplished, to say they're going to be put it in the goal, or just tell me to do it, or ask our staff to do it, and we'll,
Okay.
if we need to do that, we would do that, or I would suggest don't do it or do it. But I don't see it necessarily
As
until we
falling.
decide what the big domains that fall from that are. I don't see them falling in that minute detail, to
Okay.
be honest.
Yep.
So I think what we need to look at is, I think this board's been hungry for a strategic plan, so thank you. do we want to, and this is a process issue really for the board, do we want to send Dr. Adley and his team out there and have them come back with best practices, or do we want to focus them specifically? And I think I need to hear from the board on how they feel. And Mrs. McCammon has brought up some areas that have been discussed, OpenGov being a particularly specific one. Does the board want to send Dr. Adley and his team off? The goal really being, I think, a feeling of increased transparency. I think we all work to be as transparent as possible, but people have said, well, user-friendly, we need some more user-friendly. Do we want to be very specific in our direction to the superintendent, or do we want to send the superintendent and his team off with some guiding principles and see what they bring back to us? And I would need to hear from the board in order to help facilitate those instructions.
Well, I would think for myself that I wouldn't want to limit the administration's search in terms of how to be more open. I think giving them the flexibility to look at whatever means and methods that they feel leads to the greatest transparency and efficiency is fine, without limiting it specifically to OpenGov versus the current system.
Okay, any other thoughts? Mr. Deneen?
I agree with Mike. I mean, I like the whole concept of the strategic plan. I think with, having Dr. Adley here, I think my words, not to cloud what's on our minds or what we've heard, but knowing we can always get that information to him, let him and his process and his team go out, investigate, listen, learn, and some of it, I think, naturally will fall into place with what we've been hearing and seeing and what people have been coming to us with. And then I think that forms like the really core of the goal and objectives that we have to focus on.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I agree.
Those and I agree. Mrs.
I
McCammon?
No, I mean, I would sort of say I see them very separately. I think a strategic plan is sort of a, where are we going, how are we getting there? And the issues Mrs. McCammon is raising are issues that have sort of been percolating for some time, and I sort of put them in a separate bucket. And I think the cabinet, our board chair, can inform Dr. Adley about things that have been, percolating. And I think a fresh set of eyes on those as well. There may be different ways of doing things, but I see them as sort of very separate. And I don't want to cloud the strategic plan with what has come before you. I'd love for you to come in and look and say, here's how we move forward.
Okay. Mrs. McCammon?
I think part of the value of the strategic plan is it supports the prioritization process, and so that we understand why we're focusing on what we're focusing on. And I think there's a few issues that keep coming up that we need to understand where they sit in the overall priority of the district. So I think that OpenGov, while very specific, might be something that we prioritize higher or lower, or a look at athletics might be something that we prioritize higher or lower. So I think we could decide as a board, hey, these are our 3 or 4 key things, or we could say these are 3 or 4 things that we want you to evaluate, or these are 10 things we want you to evaluate as part of your strategic planning process, and to see where they sit in terms of how they are prioritized. It might be that it falls below, sorry for emphasis, thank you. It might be that it falls below the level of strategic planning, or it might be that something like the portables moves up because we decide that security is one of our major tiers in our strategic plan, and therefore these are the 5 items that fall underneath. So I think we need to raise the items and maybe decide what goes in here and what goes for further study for the administration.
Mr. Maroney, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I'm in the camp of not prejudicing the outcome. I think it's good to kind of go in with a blank, I don't want to say blank slate, but have a free form and listen to the information and gather, and then prioritize off of that. Like if we go in and set priorities now, I think it may be a false priority based on squeaky wheel. So I'd rather have it be.
So if I meld everyone's ideas, see if this gets us to a place. I think maybe the board has some information, but it sounds like a fresh set of eyes and kind of a non-prejudiced view of things. Does it work if we send Dr. Adley out meet with the constituents group, see what he brings back, and this is just a first read, and we still have time then to say, okay, we feel like these issues keep coming to us. Did you hear about X? But maybe first send him out. And we welcome the community to let Dr. Adley know all of your thoughts. And then we synthesize together maybe the next time we look at this or at the 90-day and say, it's interesting, we keep hearing about X. Did it not come up to you? And maybe then we can help prioritize some of those matters. Does that kind of meld all the ideas?
But I think his approach, and to Dennis's point, it'll create almost a natural prioritization, and it's a check and balance in terms of what we are hearing and what he's hearing, and then that's how we can prioritize once we have it all out on the table.
I agree.
What a couple of us may hear might be totally different than what a whole group of people tell him, and that'll bring a natural prioritization to it.
Okay, so then are we comfortable?
I would say respectfully that would be most helpful to me, and actually I don't know if the other process would work essentially, but these issues perhaps will likely come out of the discussion and then become part of the board's responsibility to frame then, if that's the case. It doesn't stop anyone to happen individually, but I wouldn't attach it to that process just now as
Okay.
a recommendation.
So we welcome the community to let their voices be heard. To Dr. Adley, you certainly always can reach out to us, and we will look to synthesizing that process as we go forward. All right, we will move on to curriculum and instruction. Dr. De Silva, I believe that will be you.
Okay, so good evening and happy summer. Before I begin to focus in on the goals that are around curriculum instruction, I think it is important to remind the public that we do have a responsive curriculum model here in Darien. So while I'm not highlighting specific content areas in these particular goals, it is work that continues. That's the work of our office with our department chairs and our curriculum directors. So the board and public will continue to receive updates throughout the course of the year. Highlighting at the beginning of this year will be world language, who you didn't hear from last year, but we'll continue to update where we are within each content area. As you know, mathematics will be an area in the middle school that you will expect to receive an update on, so that work will carry on. Having said that, and providing that foundation, I did highlight some goals that I believe are important to keep the public and the board apprised of, that we believe do need to be a priority for this school year. The first goal is to look at the exploratory model that we currently have at the middle school. And so, as you know, our students in grades 6 through 8 all have art, and 7th and 8th, they have health education, computers, digital media, tech ed, woodworking / what we now call Project Lead the Way. And so we really wanted to look at that model and whether or not it is the most effective model for students today. Moving into 2019-2020, we want to get a sense of what are other school districts doing. We did obtain some efficiencies with our last teacher contract negotiations. We want to determine whether or not we're maximizing those efficiencies. We want to look at voice and choice on the part of students and whether or not we're offering that, enough of that perhaps, and really determine or assess whether our model is the most effective one. And so that's essentially what this work will happen. And we also want to look at both material and human resources and determine whether or not we can be more efficient there. So while that work will happen this year, I'm not sure that we will be ready for implementation into next school year, so that's why you see a check mark in the continuation box, because it may continue into the following year. But we do anticipate Principal Somers, along with myself, providing an update to the board in late winter, as there may be an opportunity to have a discussion around budget impact, if there is any, if we're ready to take next steps sooner, if there are next steps to take. The second goal is around looking at the current placement structures that we have. With the work of the department chairs over the past 2 years, we have identified that perhaps we don't have a common vision or philosophy around some of the placement criteria that we do have, and whether that's honors, AP, accelerated classes, essentially grades 6 through 12, and want to get a better sense of what is the vision or philosophy that we have here in the Darien Public Schools, and do our practices align to that vision? If we don't have a vision, then we need to determine one and figure that part out. And so you'll see the action steps, and I won't go bullet by bullet, but you'll see some of the action steps that we intend on implementing, and I'm sure others will come together as well. This board knows that for the past few years, and actually beginning with Dr. Brenner in one of his early years, the taking a look at our libraries and the actual physical spaces has been a goal. And so while we did spend a year taking a look at other school districts and really what we wanted our space to look and feel like for students, we didn't actually actualize that. With a new director of instructional technology, and the plans that we have both at the district level and the school-based level, we really want to move forward in this direction, and we do believe that earlier the better. And hopefully with community support, PTO support, and perhaps school budget support, we can actualize those visions that we've presented to the board just about a year and a half ago. The last goal is actually, it's a merging between two. And so you may remember one of the goals last year was around library media and the what we might call as an ITL, or an information technology literacy curriculum. We also proposed last year a shift in our curriculum here at the middle school in grades 7 through 8, the computers and the tech ed, into shifting into a Project Lead the Way curriculum model with design and modeling and app creators. We also have new graduation requirements with STEM, and we do have practices that we employ within our science curriculum at the elementary level that bring in STEM as part of the NGSS revisions. Having said all of that, we believe it's a good opportunity to take the dispositions that we would expect for a STEM student and those that were part of what we would call our ISTE standards, and look at what does our curriculum look like K-12 in the area of STEM? Where is it taught in isolation? Where is it taught in an integrated way? And do we have an opportunity to develop a stronger framework for STEM here? So that's the work there. So it's a little bit of a combination goal from the library media curriculum and the STEM work that we believe is worth revisiting K-12. Okay? So that's curriculum and instruction, and then we'll come back to technology in a bit.
Mrs. Stein.
Thank you. On the placement classes at the high school, will you also be looking at grading and how you're weighing certain classes? I know we've sort of talked about it several years ago. It hasn't really come up, but is that something you'll also be looking at?
That may come out as a direct result of this work. It wasn't necessarily the priority,
Okay.
but I imagine that that's how these goals work out, and they end up leading to other goals, no different than the STEM and the library one.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. McCamus,
Yeah. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you. I really love the way this is structured this year. It's really easy to see from a high level, big picture, what you're doing. And I think it's really exciting to see a lot of the STEM stuff that we've been talking about really laid out in a goal or a set of goals like this. So firstly, just a big thank you. Small edit, I think, under the actualize the vision of the reimagined library. Are you talking to the Darien Foundation, I think?
Oh, it's the Darien community? Is that what I
Yeah.
thought? I'm sorry.
Yeah, under work with BOE, PTO, and Darien, I think, Foundation,
It says Darien
I see
Community
it.
Fund.
I think is what you mean, but.
Oh, I'm working off of my phone.
All right, we can make that edit.
Yeah, just a small
got
edit.
it, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so with the scope and sequence, Susie, is that all completed for STEM, or is that under that last goal?
So the K-12 scope and sequence that we drafted was not around STEM. That was around library.
Yeah.
And we integrated the ISTE standards along with the ASL standards. We did a crosswalk.
Yep.
I think it's an opportunity now with the Director of Instructional Technology, the opportunity for us to revisit our STEM program and see whether or not we're integrating enough, especially with the graduation requirements. So I just see this as an opportunity to take a look big picture
Okay.
and not look at it in isolation. A large part of these dispositions are similar.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it benefits the district to look at this in a unified way, especially when we struggle for time.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Dr. De Silva, as we look at our placement structures, I know we've heard a lot from the IDA community kind of about rigor and placement. Will kind of their concerns be built into that goal? And or would that be a place, should the board receive communications from them, to kind of direct them to you in that goal?
You're talking about the IDEA program,
Yes.
not
Sorry,
IDA.
not IDA. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I get
The IDEA, the
and
gifted and
IDA. You
talented.
guys really got to work on your names.
We actually, that's one of the proposals, is to change that.
Yes.
In terms of the IDEA program, I'm not sure, there may be some natural, it may sprinkle down to that level. This is really looking at 6 through 12. And so we currently we actually have a plan for our gifted and talented program in terms of each step that we've taken in terms of revising the curriculum and adjusting that. We've made some shifts and piloted some things this past year around when it's actually taught. It is a natural struggle when you get to the intermediate grades in terms of when it's taught, what does the differentiation look like. This is not intended for the elementary program.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs. McKenna?
So I'd just like to piggyback on that.
Yeah.
I think I'm glad to hear that it's somewhat touching here, but I hope that we continue to hear from that community that and I know you are looking at the program, but at some point I hope that we will really see it, whether it's further down the path, but a goal that really talks about looking at that
So
goal.
just let me take a moment to speak about the gifted and talented program. The challenge is, let's just say, once children get into high school, we have the Achievers program.
Yep.
Students naturally start picking their coursework that meets their needs. Certainly at the middle school, there's opportunities for some of that, less in some of the other content areas, social studies or science, for example. And so there's always work that we can do around differentiating in those content areas. But right now, at the middle school level, the gifted program is a separate program, not necessarily part of that curriculum. There are always opportunities within our curriculum to stretch students and to support struggling students. So there's always that opportunity, but it's a little bit different in terms of what the actual program is versus then how do we differentiate for students within their general programming.
So maybe at some point we can look for program updates rather than board goals.
Correct.
That'd be great.
Actually, the gifted and talented program is set to provide an update this school year.
Great.
So I appreciate that. I think maybe I could back up my question and say I want to make sure that we have a vision for all of our students, but specifically for gifted and talented students, and that may include, for the most part, differentiation in the classroom. But I just want to make sure that we have an articulated vision for that group, some components of which would be programmatic.
Understood.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. De Silva. We'll move on to business. Who got that hot potato? Me. Oh,
Me.
there you go.
It is brief, not because it's me, but because we are transitioning to a business finance director. So it's important that person, in this case Richard, gets up to speed with what our processes are. And I would actually say, Mr. McKenna, that there would be an opportunity to even look at that OpenGov process in of itself, just independently.
Yep.
It just falls naturally there.
Yep.
So that'll give, and it doesn't say it here, but clearly one of the boards, and I would say mine, would be supporting the smooth, successful transition of a new business manager, finance manager. So that's extremely important. It's sort of embedded in that, and it gives an opportunity, another fresh set of eyes from someone outside the district, but sometimes it's helpful as to how we do our work and help the board. So it's fairly brief, but I think it does what the board would want it to.
Yeah.
Questions on business? I see your hand. I'm just going to look. Any other hands before I go to Mrs. McCammon? Mrs. McCammon.
Thank you for that second bullet talking about, I like how specific it is, and I just want to encourage you to work. I think that's the intention. I appreciate that you've noted working actively with the budget committee. I think there's a lot of our finance committee. I think there's a lot of opportunities to really think carefully about how we work, and so I'm excited to see it called out here.
Okay, we'll move on to special education.
Good evening to the board
Good
and to the
evening,
parent
Mrs. Klein.
community. Marge is reminding me I have to push the
Student of the Board of Education, to the parent committee. I just wanted to start with our early learning program, and I wanted to acknowledge Laura Straighten's support and really successful work. We received a grant from the Institute of Department of Education for our early
Do I have to start again?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, take 3. Good evening to the Board of Education and the parent community. Thank you for the opportunity to present our annual goals on behalf of the Special Education and Student Services Department. I did want to begin in acknowledging Laura Straighten, our Early Learning Program Director, and her her great work, actually, and her successful receiving a grant from the Connecticut State Department of Education for this year on our early literacy program. We have already received the grant, and I just wanted to acknowledge all her efforts and work. And what that grant will provide, and we have it detailed in the first descriptor, is we're going to be actually working with Marjorie Gillis and Literacy How. There's professional development planned for 3 sessions this year. Laura is first going to meet with Margie and Literacy How on August 7th to really plan out what it will look like. And the purpose of the grant, or actually the writing of the grant, is really to speak about understanding the development of language and early literacy, looking how we can find differences in students of what they're able to do or what they still have challenges with, and really have a developmental and robust program of how we can really address their needs prior to going into school age. So we'll report out in our State of the State as we go through it this year, and Laura will be delighted to keep you updated on that progress. Looking at our commitment to social emotional learning, consistent with the good work that Susie's been doing, and I think many of the members of our community, kindergarten, well, pre-K through 12. As you're aware that you've supported our DBT process, this is year 2 of dialectal behavior therapy. We're very excited and again appreciative of the board's commitment to our additional staffing for psychologists in elementary. This year we will begin our DBT program with the same protocol and implementation as we've done in the prior year in Middlesex and the high school. There'll be bi-weekly training for our school psychologists and other designated personnel on elementary to really support the social emotional development of our students. And we will begin this year also. One additional component is to have parent workshop. They're already working on that in the fall to have an opportunity for parents to have an evening to really learn about DBT and how it's being implemented by our clinical staff in the schools. And looking at our community goal, in addition, well, let me just stay with our clinical goal also. As you know, that yearly we target which assessments we really want to work in based on our student needs. We are committed this year to working with our speech and language pathologists and working with restructuring oral motor and phonetic therapies, so we'll be continuing prompt training. We are also going to be looking at making sure that all of our psychologists are trained on the ADOS, to really looking at autism spectrum disorders and assessments. And we're going to be also making sure that all of our special education teachers are currently trained on the Woodcock Reading Mastery Test, which is an assessment that will help us look further at reading development and differences. Marilyn Friend will be continuing and working with our secondary. We did report out to the board last year that we're going to ask her to work with the administrators in the elementary school to look about continuum services in the elementary school and look at a self-study. So she will be joining us this year with that as well. And lastly, our community goal is, of course, ongoing parent training. We're looking at different levels of that this year. We'll be doing parent training both on the school level and on the district level. In the past, we've done many different trainings that include parents understanding assessments that are conducted. We'll be doing that annual training also on IEP, understanding reading your child's IEP, as well as some current issues and critical issues in special education, which we'll do with clinical issues, developmental issues, and also academic issues. We'll be doing that both on the community level and on the school levels. Parents also will participate. The different organizations in the schools really have coffees and teas that work with assessed facilitators, and those will commence as early as the fall. Thank you.
Any board comments and questions? Mr. Burke.
When was the last time that we did a specialized, a self-study at the elementary level?
It was prior to our arrival 4 years ago, so I'm not quite sure. I can look
Okay.
into when that was.
Well, that's
but
why,
it was
that's why I
prior
asked,
to.
because I don't remember there being one in the time that I've been here. So I didn't know if there had been one previously that you could compare and contrast to. But so this is
This is our
the
first.
first time in a while. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board comments or questions? Mrs. McCammon?
So first, thank you for the goals. It's always exciting. Shirley, in terms of just thinking about what our strategy for the special education program is, I just wanted, if I were to walk out of the room, I want to be sure that I can articulate what I would say and that I'm not making it up. So it looks to me like we're continuing, the DBT is following, as you said, following on our focus on social emotional learning and continuing that process. But how have we picked prompt? Why Wilson and why assessment? Why are those the priorities for special education?
So based on student need, when we look at our population of students, we've looked at oral motor as something that more children really need access to.
Okay.
It's feedback from speech pathologists, from psychologists, from teachers.
Okay.
So we've looked at that. I think for Wilson, looking at it because we really need more didactic instruction in multisensory reading, and we know that's been the most successful
Okay.
from our experience.
Thank you.
Mrs. Klein, the early learning program, the literacy instruction, and this is actually maybe for Mrs. Klein and Dr. De Silva, I assume somehow that ties in with our literacy teaching in kindergarten. So first, if you can speak to that. And then the second part of the question would be our kindergarten teachers' toolbox that we talk about our teachers' toolbox, then be robust enough because in kindergarten we'll receive children from ELP who will have early literacy training, and then we'll have children who, this might be their first take at reading and literacy. So
So if
how
I
do
may
we
give you the
merge them?
first, I'll give you the first part, and then I'll ask Susie for the second part.
Okay.
There actually is foundations of preschool. There's actually, there is looking at that. And one of the studies will be in working with Literacy How and working with Corey and other stakeholders of what we want it to look like. So that will be the self-study we're
Great.
doing during this year. We'll report back to the board when we know what our next steps will be. We're
Okay.
also going to be looking at assessments. There actually are early childhood assessments that the state is working on, and we'll look at that and report back and see what we want to tap into and how we will align it with foundations and moving forward.
Thank you.
The only piece that I would add to that is that the kindergarten curriculum that we offer our children is appropriate for kindergarten. So whether children come in with background in ELP or don't, we have a developmentally appropriate program, and we differentiate from the beginning. Because as you can imagine, like in many communities, our kindergartens are quite diverse. We have 4-year-olds, we have 5-year-olds, and we have 6-year-olds. And their background knowledge is all different. So while they will have a different experience through Literacy How, because they're assessing it and determining what that program is like, it doesn't mean that we would change what we're offering our students, and certainly not how we differentiate for them.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions on this goal? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Klein. We'll move on to human resources. Mrs. Siam.
So we have a busy negotiations year this year with teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, nurses, and that's all. It's also been a while since we've taken a look at our administrator evaluation document. We started conversations with the administrators last year. It's a little cumbersome. It checks some boxes, but it doesn't allow for the most meaningful conversation and growth. So we have some ideas which we started to discuss briefly with Dr. Adley. We will also be working on implementing the new data management system for teacher evaluation, again, in an attempt to streamline and make the conversations around the evaluation a little easier and meaningful rather than, some clunky old code that we've been using. And finally, while we've been good at giving paraprofessionals non-certified staff professional development, we'd like to broaden that and include secretaries, campus monitors, and some other people who've been asking for tools to improve their craft. So we'll be targeting that this year.
Great. Thank you. As you all know, we do go into negotiations with teachers this year. Just as a quick update, Mr. Zagrodzky has let me know that Mr. Palin will be joining the negotiations team on behalf of the Board of Finance. So as those dates come out, I will get them all to the board. But we do have our Board of Finance appointee to the team. So we look forward to that. Any questions on human resources? Nope. Thank you very much, Mrs. Sion. Community.
So the community one will be a collective effort. One of the strengths of our district that I know is the highly participatory nature of our community, and I don't think you can ever over-communicate. So learning ways to increase that, be more efficient, have a greater digital platform and presence, and other opportunities to collaborate and communicate with the community is, essentially I'll take that on with my colleagues working together and with all these wonderful people in front of me.
Oh, there's usually more. It's just summer.
It's summer.
We'll move on to, I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions regarding the community goal? All right, we'll move on to facilities. Mr. Lynch, happy summer.
I just would like to recognize Mr. Lynch, if I may. He's been very patient with me, taking around the schools, in and out of all the nooks and crannies, and I actually didn't think we had portables, but there you go, right? I did. I found that out during the tour, but anyway. He's done a terrific job here, and I didn't recognize him at the start with the rest of my colleagues here because he was hiding behind the podium, but thank you, Michael.
Hiding. I made sure you saw all the portables. Okay. So the first goal we have is to ensure the safety and security of the Darien school community. This goal kind of arose out of we were studying access to and from the high school, and the board had asked that we do a more general look at all the other entrances and exits into all the buildings in the district and see if we can come up with a more comprehensive plan. The next goal is to find a permanent solution for the school district storage needs. And this goal grew out of the fact that there had been a capital plan to put in a storage facility at the high school, and it wasn't going to be enough of a facility, and maybe a series of other facilities throughout would be a better idea. So we've had a couple meetings, one meeting with the facilities committee chair, and we're going to keep working on this one until we find a good solution. And the third goal right now is my department supports the Oxridge construction project. I go to the building committee meetings, the 7:30 meetings, and then I'm on the design review, and we're helping facilitate some of the purchase orders that because we have a better idea of what they're for at this point than the town finance department. So we're kind of working with them to make sure everything stays in proper order for the grant process.
Great.
Are there any questions?
Facilities questions on our goals? Mr. Burke.
Though it's not specifically enunciated on one of these bullet points, would the consideration of the portable situation come under that broad goal of ensuring safety and security?
For me, it would. Are you asking me? We
Okay,
can pull
just
around.
to-
I think we all feel safety and security with portables.
Well, that would be one of the biggest questions I would have, of how we are addressing safety and security with those portables operationally. And
Okay.
I've posed that question already, and so that's a big component of it, I would think.
Okay, thank you.
Any other facilities questions on the goals? I think we see you again later this evening, don't we, Mr.
Yes.
Lynch?
Yep.
All right, thank
sorry.
you.
I do have
Oh,
one.
Mrs.
Sorry.
McCammon, you were so close, Mr. Lynch. Come on back up.
Yes.
I'll let March go. Are we going to actually come up with a facilities plan? I mean, I know we have a capital plan. It has building conditions. Is that still a desire? Just because it's not mentioned here.
Yes, we are. That's something that the last facilities committee, briefly we touched upon, sort of now that the Oxridge project is actually going and it's been funded, the next step. You know, how do we bundle the other needs of all the buildings? So yes, we are.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Lynch? Thank you. We'll move on to technology.
So while we do have an isolated headline here for technology, you'll notice within curriculum and instruction, these theoretically could have been dropped in there. So the first goal is surfaces around the technology plan. So in the past, for your knowledge, the State Department of Education did require that each school district submit, I think it was a 3-year plan, to them for approval. And so we've always had that. It's my understanding that that's no longer required. Having said that, we still believed that having a technology plan lays the foundation or the groundwork really for all the work that we do ultimately to transition learning experiences for students with technology. So we did last year reconvene a committee to begin the idea of a new technology plan. We have decided, like our other curriculum areas, that especially with technology, probably even more than the other content areas, that a 3-year technology plan doesn't make sense. Because for those of you who have the iPhones, realize that that changes by the second. And so we really wanted more of a fluid plan. But also, having said that, we created the plan last year. We wrapped it up towards the end of June and felt as if we did not collect enough feedback from all of the stakeholders to be sure that this was the responsive and fluid plan that we wanted. So while we do have version 3.0 ready to go, I think at this point we're going to be looking for feedback from our administrators and being sure that that plan is ready for implementation with their feedback. We had parents on the committee, we had teachers, administrators, and certainly those that work most closely with technology. The second technology goal is really about creating a personalized professional learning plan for our teachers. We have new teachers that come into our district that are getting accustomed to Google. We have iPads for our students. We're looking at the different resources that are available to our teachers and to our students. Specifically in some content areas, the technology may lend itself, let's just say, with greater ease, and others perhaps with greater challenge. And so giving support to each of those teachers is important, and it really needs to be based on their needs. And so you'll notice within the action steps that we really want to collect feedback, create a plan. Again, it needs to be fluid, but ensure that our teachers and administrators and other staff receive the support that they need, and you'll see some topics along those lines. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions on technology? Mrs. McCammon.
Specifically on technology, I don't know that it belongs at this level, but I just think that a wonderful addition to the plan would be meaningful metrics, because technology does change so quickly. So good ways to capture what's working and what's not, so that we're not down a path we don't want to be on. And I think whether it's around usage rates or efficacy, and again, I'm sure you do it, but I just want to be very sure for technology that we're really fairly careful with thinking about what's effective.
Yes, one of the, just as a quick point to that, one of the first steps that Dr. Joan McGettigan has planned for is really collecting feedback from students, in particular at the secondary level, where they're able to articulate how their learning experience has transitioned as a result of the technology.
Great.
So we will be collecting some feedback from them. Mm-hmm. We do collect some usage rates, as you know, at the secondary level. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we can do better there. Mm-hmm. But how we're implementing it, I think, still needs to be a big part of the plan for teachers.
Any other board comments or questions on technology? Mrs. McCammon.
The second thing is I wanted to say thank you for having a professional learning plan around technology. I think that's really exciting. So I'm super happy to see it articulated there.
Thank you.
Any other questions on technology? Okay, again, this is a first read. These will come back to the board. Additionally, the 90-day plan will come back to the board. So we probably will not go one by one. Be aware this will come back and ready for your questions or thoughts. So thank you, everyone. I know this is an immense amount of work for you all to get forward, but it is really our roadmap on how we move forward until that strategic plan is in place. So we appreciate all the work that went into it. We will move on to the update on summer facilities. Mr. Lynch. Facilities projects.
You have in front of you a report, a chart listing the different locations in the school district and the projects we're attempting to get done this summer. The DLC area at Hindley School is still on schedule to be finished by Wednesday. We're almost finished painting it. The floor went in today. The electric's done. Everything else is done in the room. The backflow, the RPZ valve at Hindley and Holmes, that's the backflow preventer. It was capital project money from a year ago. That's the same. Still needs the electric and then the building department approval. Changing out the lights in the serving line, that the LED lighting change out at Hindley, Middlesex, Hallways, and Holmes are scheduled to start the end of this week, beginning of next week. The parts were delivered last week. We've gotten the approval from Eversource. We have the grant money, promise of the grant money, which is about a 5 to 8% reimbursement that comes back to us. That's been approved, and so the project's ready to go. The exhaust fan in the kitchen, I'm still waiting. This is still on schedule, but we don't have the part yet. The windows in the 47 and 76 sections that are being changed out, that is still on schedule to be completed August 18th.
Why don't I save you from reading this all to us?
Thank you.
Because we have it right here as you read it. Are there any questions on where projects are for the board? Because this is fairly thorough and what we asked for last year, so thank you very much. Mrs. McCammon.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with DLC, what's driving that, and what's happening there?
There was, I believe, more children.
So may I?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Thank you for the question. If I could thank you, Mr. Lynch, for making that happen. Actually, in our tour, we looked at DLC the way the design was. We had a small classroom up front and we had a classroom in the back, looking at our program. One of the last things Dr. Landon did when he was here, we did a tour of the building and we looked at it and said, what do we need to do to improve this? We, not just based on enrollment, but the whole program design of really wanting an authentic developmental program for our children coming in. So under the auspices of Dr. Landon and then followed by Dr. Adley, who did the tour visit also, we had a chance to look at everything. We reached out and said, is there a way we could make a proper program in the back of the building? So now we will have 3 DLC classrooms next to each other, sharing a center space where we can push in and really design our program the way we want to. There's actually a kitchen area. We made an area that kids can really do different social skills groups, really do cooking and measuring and different opportunities of daily living skills. Julie's been overseeing it as well, Droller over at the building, and we have a really exciting program and design now that we have thanks to the hard work of Mr. Lynch and all of the staff that's been working on that. And we're planning on inviting the parents sometime in August before school starts for tea or a coffee to really see the center, see the program, and how we'll be designing it. So
Great.
That was the intention. And thank you.
Any other questions on projects?
Just one, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Burke.
I couldn't resist. When I was looking at the high school and it said clean out storage area under small bleacher status next rainy day, what does rainy day have to do with that?
My groundsmen do that work.
Okay.
When it's a rainy day, I look for stuff for the groundsmen to do. It's a good job for them.
Sort of figured, but I just had
No, that's exactly what it is.
Can I
I'm
look
sorry,
at?
Danny.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, I have a question on Holmes. You have repair, replace fencing, but your estimate is pending and the neighbor has asked us to wait. Can you just elaborate on that a little more?
We had a section by the kindergarten circle at Holmes where it's about a 7-foot section where we had a fence on one side and there were trees that were on our property, and then they had a retaining wall and a fence. Our trees fell towards their house. Actually, one of the trees hit the house. So we tore up the roots. They come up by the root ball in that storm at the end of June. So we ruined their retaining wall and their chain link fence.
Well, the storm ruined their
Storm, not we. Yeah, it wasn't like people that will remain nameless. No, it was a storm. So the people, their insurance company's covering the damage to their property. We've removed the down stumps and they removed the trees. We removed all our stuff. So I asked them the other day, because of the way their house is built, I said, do you have to access your repairs to your stone wall from our property? And if you do, I won't put the fence up. And they said, thank you, please, that would be wonderful. And, you know, they'd have to destroy some of their landscaping to get in the back. So it just made sense, come on in off our, and they promise we'll be, you know, they won't impact school. They'll be done and out of there, and we'll have the fence up before school starts.
Great. Can I ask about Royal? I see a lot of not scheduled yet. How do we think Royal will be done by time school opens?
We did schedule the cafeteria painting, and we did schedule the flooring. I got the estimate Friday afternoon.
Okay.
The faculty room painting and the faculty room floor haven't been scheduled yet, but that's such a small area. That's the type of stuff I could do that during, you know, a holiday break if I had to. That's not really.
Just so they don't get forgotten. That's all.
No, they're not forgotten. The Royal staff will make sure I don't forget the faculty room, which is fine.
All right, thank you. I think this is very helpful and kind of what we asked for last year, so I really appreciate the time that went into it. Are there any other questions on this report? All right, thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
So have a good night.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to an update on enrollment for the 2019-2020 school year and possible action on utilization of budget control. Dr. De Silva.
Good evening again. I am actually distributing an updated K-12 enrollment. The reason that there are some shifts is because, as you know, the summer is quite unpredictable, and we do get shifts. Some of them are smaller, some of them, actually all of them are small, but we certainly have had some shifts and likely have had more as of when this was printed. In addition to that, I've included the actual number of sections versus the budgeted number of sections. So, for example, the small number beneath, you'll see is the number of sections that we had budgeted for and where we are right now. So while we are not anticipating having to go into budget control, because it's within our budget, I do anticipate that there still could be a couple of children added here or there. We have a new online registration process, and so we've asked our secretaries for those parents that have started but not completed, that they do complete the process so we can be sure that we have accurate numbers. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Mrs. McCammon.
So just to clarify, the net decrease from budgeted is the number of sections, or is that the number of kids? Looks like sections, but
That is sections on the right-hand side? That's the number of
Yeah,
sections, yes.
that's the number of sections. Okay.
But as you can see, for example, Hindley Kindergarten is close. First grade Tokenique is close. Second grade Tokenique is close.
Well, and I am correct that in recent years, we've seen right before school starts,
Absolutely.
all of a sudden we
Right.
look like we're down and we
That's
end up.
correct. Mhm.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? No budget control.
Oh, Duke has one.
No, go ahead.
Do we have any pressure in terms of classroom availability?
No, not as of right now. We're okay.
Mr. Deneen, did I see your hand?
Is there anything else you need to do in terms of communication around the new sign-up portal, or
No,
it's going well?
I think that's going very well, actually. What it does allow for us is for those parents that have their paper copies at home and started the registration packets, we don't even know they're there. At least we already know that there's someone in the queue that just hasn't. So if they can finish what they have in the queue, that would be great. Get them out of the queue and into the system.
Oh, so Dr. De Silva is you're very good, but she doesn't do it until it's all done. So you have some people in the queue. is what
There
I'm
could
hearing.
be people in the queue, but we
All
do
right.
not count those students until they are fully registered.
Okay, so anyone looking at these numbers should know there's some in the queue. Okay, I should have known better. I know. Dr. De Silva likes the whole packet in. Dr. Adley.
So I'm new. I can ask. Would I ask, given when the date is of our next meeting,
August
and,
27th.
right, and then the lead time that the staff will need with the community members to tell them which class their children are actually in. I would be wondering if you could extend the tacit understanding, if we don't go into budget control, if I needed to add a section in one of those kindergartners before we have that next meeting, because I would want to tell the parents that would have the tacit approval to do that and understanding to do that, as long as they don't go into budget approval.
So you, we set sections this evening. You have availability within your number of sections at schools to move things around as you need, and within your budget to move things around if you need. If we need to release from budget control to create an extra section that's outside of what's already budgeted, you would need to come back to us. However, we'd appreciate an update if you make another section anyway. Make sense?
So just to be clear, if I don't go into budget control and I have a need to make the additional section, you'd be apprised, but you understand that I would do
Correct.
that.
You have budgeted 107 sections.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
So
Okay.
we're not requiring a vote to move it from budget control? Because I thought.
That's not what we're saying. We have 107 sections budgeted.
We have 104
It was 104 booked. So if we
Go over.
absolutely require a
To
vote
go to budget
to
control.
move out of budget control.
Thank you.
So we're not.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for this report. This, again, is another report laid out as we asked, and it's very helpful to look at it this way. Thank you, Dr. De Silva. We will move on to a discussion on proposed board responsibilities for review on a yearly basis. This is the same roles and responsibilities that we adopted August 28th, 2018. If anyone has any updates, I did not hear of them prior to the meeting, but if you do, you are welcome to let me know now, or if you are comfortable with them as they stand, we can, there's no possible action on them tonight. At our next meeting, we would bring them forward again. Does anyone have any comments or questions on our responsibilities? Okay, great. We will see them next meeting. Now we're really moving along. An update on the master agenda, February through August of 2019. All the changes are highlighted in yellow. I would say, given some of our discussions tonight, I would love to have the new director of technology to come in if we can find an appropriate time, and we don't need to set that tonight. But I think in the latter half of the year, it would be a really good idea. Oh, these are through August 2019.
This
I'm
is
sorry.
just to our August.
We're only getting us to
meeting, so
19.
Next meeting.
So our
we're
next
going
meeting will
through
go
that.
further, but that would be something I'd like to see on the future.
Dr. McGettigan will actually be here in the earlier part of the year, given some of the board goals.
Okay, perfect. I do think we'd love to hear from her. Any other comments or questions through August of 2019? All right, we will move on. A discussion and possible action on the proposed schedule of 2019-2020 regular meetings.
So the meetings are as presented for consideration for the board.
Yes.
But so do we need to change the April date? Should we pick that date now?
So I think I would move it now so that we don't have to warn for special meetings. I also think that with the possible primary and voting, we may want to move the 10th to the 11th, being cognizant of the Jewish holidays, because they always fall around there. Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions regarding the calendar? While I double check those. Nobody? Or everybody's looking? So I would suggest changing September 10th to September 11th, and or if we want to hold and wait and see if there's not a primary, just know that that would be a special meeting and mark it on your calendars now. The presidential primaries, given the number of candidates in the field, might be a good bet for the 28th. But I'm willing to hold special meetings as long as people have it on their calendars and know that once those agendas are then set, we can't alter them. So I would need to know the board's preference. Do they want to vote for chance of primary, or do they want to hold? Anybody have an
I
opinion?
prefer to hold on the 10th because I'm away the 11th, but and I like my minutes. I don't know if
Okay.
everybody
Anyone else? So hold on the 10th is up there, which I'm fine because that keeps us on a regularly scheduled Tuesday, which the public can predict. But just know that then,
We're not voting till next time, right?
no, there's possible action.
We're
today.
voting tonight?
Yeah, because we
Okay.
would need to move these.
Okay.
Anyone feel strongly on the April date? Or do you just want to hold it and know it's going to be a special meeting?
Well, if we think that there's really going to be a primary on the 28th, then why don't we just move it now?
That would be my preference. It gives us more flexibility with the agenda.
Okay. So as between the 29th or 30th, it doesn't matter to me.
I would do the Wednesday. Does everyone want to look at April 29th on their calendar? If anyone actually has their schedule booked that far, I'm duly impressed by you. All right, so I will make a motion to change the regular meeting to the April 29th. Do I have a second on that motion? Mr. Burke,
Wait,
all
hold on
in.
one second, hold on. Do you want to just change it and make a motion to?
On a new schedule?
On a new schedule as
Sure.
amended?
So I will.
Are there any other amendments to the schedule?
That 4th or 11th, do we need to specify that it's the 4th with a snow date on the 11th?
I don't think we do at this moment. I think if we warn it this way right now, we're safe. So I would make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 board schedule with the amendment of the April 28th meeting moving till April 29th. May I have a motion? Mr. Burke, a second. Mr. Deneen, all in favor? That is everybody. Thank you, and I will note this for Nadine as well. All right, we move on to action items. Personnel items, Mrs. Sion.
So we continue to hire. We're almost fully staffed. We have gotten a couple of late resignations, and we look to fill those. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be all there.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the personnel action report dated July 29th, 2019? Mr. Maroney so moves. Mr. Burke seconds. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you for your work over the summer, Mrs. Sion, on this. Keeps you busy. Any other public comment this evening? You guys are quiet tonight again. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Maroney so moves. Mr. Burke seconds. All in favor? And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.